Genius easily cemented himself for me as being one of the most engaging and interesting artists of the 2010s, with a really, really tight discography, which I think, spanned from pretty amazing to really good albums. I really didn't think he dropped a dud throughout the 2010s at all. Putting out amazing songs throughout the 2010s, some of my favourites of the entire decade, Slip Away, Queen, as well as many others too. A couple of standout favourite albums of the decade. He really just hit the ball out of the park with so much fantastic music, spanning from lo-fi indie type music on his debut to really extravagant chamber pop music on No Shape, which was my favourite album of 2017 and still remains to be my favourite of that year too. A phenomenal talent for our current time in music, I think. He really is showcasing some of the best we see in today's music, and it's kind of a shame that none of his songs or albums really took off in any particular way. He's just always been the indie darling, if you will, but for me, I think he just deserves way more than he gets. He's doing well for himself, don't get me wrong, but my God, would it be great to see him, hit the charts with a single or just go viral with a song. He deserves it, like, he really does. So with all that being said, you can clearly tell I hold him to such a high regard that Set My Heart on Fire Immediately would be such a highly anticipated record for 2020. And to be honest, I will admit that I've been struggling a little bit with this album. I've been sitting with it for quite a lot since it dropped on Friday, and I'm not going to be like too negative here, but I think reviews like this end up sounding more negative than they should because of the expectations I impose on an artist, if you get what I mean. Like, I think this is a solid album overall. This is a solid album, don't get me wrong, but a solid album for an artist of his standard, of his caliber, to me just ends up feeling worse than it is. This album at points shoots for simplicity, which I find to be quite admirable. Often you're just getting his vocals in a very stripped back instrumental, probably more often than I would like, to be honest, because I don't know if these tracks really differ from each other when you hit those ones, and there are quite a few of them too. But I appreciate that, we're just getting Perfume Genius's really like natural voice. Like, it really just feels very raw in the moment. The emotion that he puts into these tracks as well, I think is pretty fantastic. I mean, it would be coming from him regardless anyway, but I think even just when you put him in a lineup of vocalists of our current era that we're in, I think he would just shine above so many of them, even on his worst days. And that's why I at least have a very strong appreciation for many of these tracks, even when I'm not exactly loving what I'm hearing, because I at least find so much to like about his voice. He has an undeniably strong vocal presence that I think, again, is just incredibly powerful to listen to at times, but with tracks like Moonbend, I'm just not fully engaged with what's going on. I almost feel like something needs to change. It does somehow run on longer than it actually feels. Like, I don't know. I'm just kind of waiting for something bigger to happen. I think that's what my expectations with Perfume Genius tend to be. I know he has something greater in him, and listening to even a track like Jason as well, just, again, waiting for something to kind of pop. Once you hit the second half too, you do get like a string of tracks that feel quite similar in terms of their sound, except for Nothing at All, which I think is one of the standout tracks on the entire album. I think he brings in a bit more character with his voice on this track. His tone of voice that peaks on some songs in the past and on this album too, where he goes, yeah, like, that's just signature Perfume Genius. Like, you just instantly, like, there he is, he's back in the room, giving his just unique vocal tone that no one else really would bring. Go back to tracks like Queen, go back to tracks like Mr. Peterson. There's just that really distinct vocal tone that, again, like, you couldn't find from anyone else. And I think I'm just waiting for that, you know, singing in falsetto the whole time on Jason. Not anything wrong with that. He obviously sings in falsetto on plenty of tracks, especially on No Shape as well. But I don't know if the instrumental is interesting enough and as engaging as enough as I'd like it to be. And when you dig into the lyrics on that track too, I'm kind of confused, especially towards the end where he talks about stealing $20 from a guy. Just not really following the story with that one, to be honest. But this isn't to take away from the prettiness of some of these tracks, even if I do feel as though the more extravagant production that we've heard from him in the past fits his voice better than some of the tracks here. Like the opener is incredibly beautiful, honestly. And then you hit Describe too, which I appreciate just for the fact that it's really completely different to anything we've ever heard from him before. It's got this like really ominous and droning instrumental that I'm just completely like taken aback by. Every time it comes on, I'm like, wow, like he's really going for something very dark here. It is another moment for me where I'm definitely appreciating it a lot more than I'm actually loving it. Not to say that it's bad or sounds, you know, off or anything, but I just am enamored with the fact that he went for something like this. But would I go back to it? I'm not entirely sure. Like, I don't know if I'd pick out this track in particular to just play whenever. It's quite a particular mood setting song, whereas when you get to the more immediate tracks like On the Floor, I mean, this track right here is just an instant hit. It's kind of weird to think that this wasn't the lead single, to be honest, because this like kind of Tears for Fears type instrumental, very like 80s throwback as well going here. Yeah, honestly, just a fantastic song. It's just instantaneous. Like he really is just sharp with pop songs. I mean, go to Slip Away or any other tracks like Queen as well, Hood, you know, just these really immediately satisfying tracks that he just nails. And yeah, I mean, maybe it is one of the more simple songs on the album, you could probably say, in terms of the design and how he's not really bringing anything new to the table. But my God, when he hits it like this, why would you say no to it? He alludes to some themes that he's touched on in the past too, with lines like "How long till my body is safe." He's mentioned this in interviews before. He has some kind of, I'm not entirely sure what it is. I need to read up on the actual like ins and outs of what the condition is, but it's some kind of skin condition, some kind of like you know, weird dysmorphia that he goes through. And I just like this line as well because it's just very like daunting, you know, asking that question like, how long, you know, when will my body feel safe? Your Body Changes Everything is another fantastic track too. The line where he says your body changes everything, you're anchoring me. I feel as though he just puts so much passion and love into other people that it's really hard to deny. And you feel it as well, like you feel it in his songs. Go back to it again, I keep mentioning previous songs from him, but go to a song like Alan and you just feel the sheer love coming out of his voice. It's really beautiful. Something feels very special about the way he writes tracks like this. Not to say that, you know, he's the only artist that ever does it, but I do feel like he brings something so unique with the way he writes his words and the way he sings his words, especially on tracks like this as well, that just hits a spot that you wouldn't tend to find. The album ends really strong too with Borrowed Light. Like the vocal performance on here, again, he is just so raw and in the moment here. Like the way his voice cracks on the last line of the song, it's just beautiful to listen to. Like he really just puts in his all into his performances, and you can tell like he cares so much about his craft and he cares so much about the words he's saying. And I think overall, when I sit down with this album, I'm just feeling like those moments are slightly scarce. Like I don't know if a track like Leave particularly has anything going on that interests me on a musical level or even a vocal level, actually. Like when he gets it right, like you feel it, but then this track's just incredibly faint, just very thin, and then it just goes into On the Floor in a really weird way to me. I don't know why that's placed before On the Floor. I'm just not really sure about the flow of that. And speaking of flow, I think the entire album has an odd flow, you know. Like there are some tracks that kind of feel a bit out of place. I'm not sure exactly if the sequencing is entirely great, but I think the bouncing around of some, you know, genre shifts doesn't exactly help either. But yeah, I think ultimately though, the biggest issue is just too many soft, quiet tracks that don't leave that much of an impression on me. I've already mentioned the ones, you know, that I'm specifically, you know, not that enamored with, but I could probably name a couple of more as well that leave that same feeling of like emptiness on me, which is just kind of weird for Perfume Genius. Not that the songs are particularly bad, but I'm not sure if it's something to do with my listening experience here. Just strange to feel as though some tracks just aren't leaving much of an impression on me when it is an artist that I hold so highly. I think the thing is that you could easily say that the expectations were so high that maybe in a few months' time I could go back to this and completely feel different. But I think for now, I do like it overall, but it does feel like it pales in comparison to what he's given us in the past. I'm gonna go 6 out of 10. I think it's still solid overall, but there are just a few too many moments that don't quite grip me, which is a shame, but the highs are very high, as always, from him. So I can't be too disappointed, but I think overall, thinking about this album, it does feel like a bit of a disappointment. I have seen a really strong positive reception towards this though, so it's good to see. But yeah, for me, it's just not hitting the spot. It's just not hitting for me, unfortunately, throughout. But again, it's solid overall. So do let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. If you disagree, agree. Thank you for watching my review. Hopefully you have a good day, and don't get too mad at me. Goodbye.